Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie The Fate of the Furious in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, West Films Friends, in today's video. The movie we're going to talk about is called The Fate of the Furious. I'm also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. This video is produced by West Films. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will give you a small review of the story of this film. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. The Fate of the F. Furious is a 2070 action film directed by F. Gary Gray and written by Chris Morgan. It is the sequel to Furious 7 2015 and the 8th installment in the Fast and Furious franchise. The film stars Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto, alongside Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Ludacris Bridges, Scott Eastwood, Nathalie Emmanuel, Elsa Pataky, Kurt Russell, and Charlize Theron. In the film, Dom has settled down with his wife, Letty Ortiz, until cyber-terrorist Cypher Theron coerces him into working for her and turns him against his team, forcing them to find Dom and take down Cypher. The 8th installment was planned since 2014, and in March 2015, it was revealed the film would be set in New York City. Preparations for the film began immediately before the release of Furious 7, with Diesel, Morgan, and producer Neil H. Moritz re-signing. After setting an initial release date in that same month, casting took place between April and June. In October, Gray was announced to direct the film in the place of James Wan, who had directed the previous installment. Composer Brian Tyler, who had scored the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 7th installments, returned to compose the score. Principal photography began in March 2016 in locations such as Mevatin, Havana, Atlanta, Cleveland, and New York City, continuing the franchise's tradition of filming around the world. With an estimated production budget of up to $270 million, it is one of the most expensive films ever made. This is the first film in the series since The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, 2006, not to star Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor, following his death in November 2013. The Fate of the Furious premiered in Berlin on April 4, 2017, and was theatrically released in the United States on April 14th by Universal Pictures. It received mixed reviews from critics, with praise for the performances of the cast and action sequences, but criticism for the storyline. The film was a box office success, grossing over $1.2 billion worldwide, making it the 30th film and the second in the franchise after Furious 7 to gross over $1 billion, the 3rd highest grossing film of 2017 and the 11th highest grossing film of all time at the time. It also grossed $541.9 million worldwide during its opening weekend, which made it the highest grossing worldwide opening of all time until the release of Avengers: Infinity War a year later. The film was followed by a spin-off, Hobbs & Shaw 2019, and a direct sequel, F9 2021. Plot: Dominic Toretto and Letty Ortiz are on their honeymoon in Havana when Dom's cousin Fernando gets in trouble owing money to local racer Raldo. Sensing Raldo is a loan shark, Dom challenges Raldo to a race, pitting Fernando's 1949 Chevrolet Fleetline against Raldo's 1956 Ford Fairlane Crown Victoria and wagering his own 1961 Chevrolet Impala. After narrowly winning the race, Dom allows Fernando to keep his car, saying a Toretto needs a faster car. The next day, a mysterious woman named Cypher coerces Dom into working for her by showing him something on her phone. Shortly afterward, DSS agent Luke Hobbs is assigned an off-the-books mission to retrieve an EMP device from a military outpost in Berlin and is warned that he will face arrest if captured. Hobbs recruits Dom and his team, which includes Letty, Roman Pierce, Tej Parker, and Ramsey, to assist him in recovering the device. During the getaway, Dom forces Hobbs off the road and steals the device for Cypher, who is a cyber terrorist. Hobbs is arrested and confined in the same high-security prison which holds Deckard Shaw. They initiate a prison escape and are recruited by intelligence operative Mr. Nobody and his protege, Little Nobody, to help the team find Dom and capture Cypher. When Hobbs and the team protest working with Deckard, he reveals that Cypher had hired his brother Owen to steal an electromagnetic pulse weapon called Nightshade and Mos Jakande to steal God's Eye, a mass surveillance computer program created by Ramsey. The team tracks Dom and Cypher to their own location. The two attack the base and steal God's Eye. When Dom expresses frustration with Cypher, she reveals his ex-lover and DSS agent Elena Nieves, along with their son, whose existence Dom was unaware of, having kidnapped both to secure his loyalty. Cypher sends Dom to retrieve a nuclear football held by the Russian Minister of Defense in New York City. With Raldo's help, Dom briefly evades Cypher and persuades Deckard and Owen's mother Magdalene to assist him, offering to arrange the Shaw brothers freedom from government custody if they rescue his son from Cypher's plane. Cypher hacks into the electronic systems of several cars, remotely controlling them via autodrive, causing them to block the convoy so Dom can take the football. The team intercepts Dom in their cars, but he escapes and seemingly kills Deckard. Letty catches up to Dom and takes the football, but is nearly killed by Cypher's enforcer, Connor Rhodes, before Dom stops him and forces the football from Letty. In retaliation, Cypher allows Rhodes to execute a tied-up Elena in front of Dom, threatening to kill his son next if he fails to follow her orders again. Dom infiltrates a military base in Russia using the EMP device to disable security and activate a nuclear submarine, allowing Cypher to hijack it and attempt to use its arsenal to trigger a nuclear war. They are intercepted by the team, who shut down the submarine's nuclear weapons and drive toward the gates that would prevent the sub from leaving to the sea, while being pursued by separatists. Deckard, who faked his death with the help of Magdalene and Dom's former crew members Leo and Santos, teams up with Owen and infiltrates Cypher's plane to rescue Dom's son. Once Deckard reports that the child is safe, Dom turns on Cypher and kills Rhodes before rejoining his team. Cypher fires an infrared homing missile at Dom's charger, but he breaks away from his team and lures the missile to the trailing submarine. The team blocks Dom from the explosion as the submarine is destroyed. After defeating Cypher's henchmen, Deckard confronts Cypher, who escapes by parachute. Mr. Nobody informs Dom's team that Cypher is still at large. Hobbs has his record cleared and is offered his DSS job back, but declines to spend more time with his daughter. Deckard delivers Dom's son, setting aside differences, and is accepted into the family. Dom names his son Brian and celebrates with friends. Cast. Main articles, list of Fast and Furious cast members and list of Fast and Furious characters. Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto, a former criminal, professional street racer and millionaire who has retired and settled down with his wife Letty. Dwayne Johnson as Luke Hobbs, a former DSS agent who allied with Dom and his team following their outings in Rio de Janeiro in Europe. Jason Statham as Deckard Shaw, a former Special Forces soldier and intelligence agent who was imprisoned by Hobbs and the DSS after his defeat in Los Angeles, who serves as an ally to help Dom's team take down Cypher. Michelle Rodriguez as Letty Ortiz, a former professional street racer, married to Dom and the stepmother of Brian Marcos. Tyrese Gibson as Roman Pierce, a former criminal from Barstow and a member of Dom's team. Chris Ludacris Bridges as Tej Parker, a mechanic from Miami and a member of Dom's team. Scott Eastwood as Little Nobody, a law enforcement agent working under Mr. Nobody. Nathalie Emmanuel as Ramsey, a British computer hacktivist and a member of Dom's team. Elsa Pataki as Elena Neves, the biological mother of Brian Marcos and a former Rio de Janeiro police officer who moved to the United States to become Hobbs' new partner at the DSS. Kurt Russell as Mr. Nobody, an intelligence operative and the leader of a covert ops team which previously aided Dom and his team in taking down Deckard in Abu Dhabi. Charlize Theron as Cypher, a criminal mastermind and cyber terrorist who coerces Dom into working against his team by holding Elena and their son hostage. Tego Calderon and Don Omar reprised their respective roles as Tego Leo and Rico Santos, former members of Dom's team from Los Bandoleros 2009, Fast and Furious 2009, and Fast 5 2011. Christopher Hivju portrays Connor Rhodes, Cypher's right-hand man and second-in-command Patrick Esprit appears as D.S. Allen. Luke Evans reprises his role from Fast and Furious 6 2013 and Furious 7 2015 as Owen Shaw, Deckard's younger brother and former mercenary who previously opposed Dom's team in Europe and who helps his brother in rescuing Dom's son. Helen Mirren makes an uncredited cameo appearance as Magdalene Shaw, the mother of Deckard and Owen Shaw. Celestino Corniel portrays Raldo, a street racer whose respect Dom earns. Production. Development. In November 2013, Paul Walker was asked in an interview if there was going to be an eighth film. He said that there was likely going to be an eighth film, but the question was who was going to return for the film. Sadly, Walker passed away just 2 weeks after that interview. In November 2014, Universal Pictures chairwoman Donna Langley confirmed that a discussion regarding 3 sequels to Furious 7 2015 had taken place. Actor Vin Diesel reaffirmed this in September 2015, alluding the trilogy could lead to the mainline series' conclusion. He stated that the 8th film was acceptable, as Paul Walker said. Diesel further hinted at an 8th film on Jimmy Kimmel Live, when he stated that Kurt Russell's character would span multiple films. He also stated that the next film would take place in New York City. Chris Morgan returned to write his 6th script in the franchise, while Neil H. Moritz returned to produce. Moritz later stated, "The story is going to have to be something enticing for all of us. It has to be as good as or better than Furious 7. At the 2015 CinemaCon in Las Vegas, Diesel announced the film for an April 14, 2017 release date. In August, at the 2015 Teen Choice Awards, where Furious 7 received the award for Choice Movie Action and Walker received the award for Choice Movie Actor Action, Diesel gave the film the initial title Fast 8. In September, Diesel stated that the script had almost been completed and expressed interest in Rob Cohen, who directed the first film, to direct the 8th installment. Furious 7, 2015, film director James Wan was originally contractually hired to direct this film in F9, 2021, but the studio let him go after he told them about his wishes to make The Conjuring 2, 2016, a sequel to his previous horror film The Conjuring, 2013. The studio went back to offer Wan directing the film after Justin Lin, who directed the film series since The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, 2006, to Fast and Furious 6, 2013, chose to direct Star Trek Beyond 2016 over returning to the series, but Wan firmly declined directing both this film and the 9th film due to the 7th film's demanding production impacting on his health. In October, Diesel announced on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon that Straight Outta Compton 2015 director F. Gary Gray would direct the film. In July, Moritz said that Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, would not appear in the film, following the use of CGI in the previous film after Walker died in a single-vehicle accident in November 2013, with Moritz stating that his character had moved on. It had previously been reported that Paul's younger brother, Cody Walker, would either join the cast in a new role or replace his older brother in the role of O'Connor. However, it was later announced that the character will not return to the franchise. Moritz also said that the film would shift the focus of the franchise from a series of heist films to spy films, following a similar change in focus from street racing to heist films in Fast 5 2011. In December 2016, the film was retitled The Fate of the Furious. Casting. Diesel, Russell, and Michelle Rodriguez were the first to confirm their involvement in the film 6, and Tyrese Gibson and Chris Ludacris Bridges both confirmed their return soon after. Diesel was paid $20 million for his involvement. Lucas Black had signed on to reprise his role from The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift 2006 as Sean Boswell for Furious 7 2015, this installment in F9 2021. In September 2013, In May 2015, Dwayne Johnson confirmed his involvement in the film, additionally hinting at a possible spin-off film involving his character, Luke Hobbs. Jason Statham also confirmed his return that same month. In April 2016, Charlize Theron and Christopher Hivju were confirmed as additions to the cast in villainous roles, while Scott Eastwood also joined the film as a law enforcement agent. In May, Nathalie Emmanuel was confirmed to reprise her role as Ramsey in the film. In June, Helen Mirren announced in an interview with Elle that she would appear in the film. During an interview with Chris Mannix in July, Lucas Black confirmed he would not appear in the 8th installment due to scheduling conflicts with NCIS New Orleans. Filming. In keeping with the franchise's penchant for filming in exotic locations, such as Abu Dhabi and Rio de Janeiro, it was announced in January 2016 that Universal was seeking approval from the United States and Cuban governments to shoot part of the film in Cuba. Principal photography began on March 14th in Mývatn, Iceland, where strong winds sent a plastic iceberg prop flying into a paddock. The prop struck 2 horses. One was wounded and the other mortally injured. It was later euthanized. In late April, filming began in Cuba's capital city, Havana. In May, filming also took place in Cleveland, once again standing in for Manhattan. Franchise cinematographer Stephen F. Windon returned for the 8th installment. Filming also took place in Atlanta and New York City. Music. Main article, The Fate of the Furious. Brian Tyler, who scored the 3rd, 4th, and 7th installments, was tapped to compose the film score for the 8th picture. A soundtrack album by Atlantic Records was released on April 14, 2017, coinciding with the film's U.S. theatrical release. The film's score album was released on April 28th by Backlot Music. Release. Theatrical. The Fate of the Furious had its world premiere in Berlin on April 4, 2017. The film was theatrically released in the United States on April 14, 2006. The film was released in 1,074 IMAX screens around the world, making it the widest opening in IMAX history. Home media. The Fate of the Furious was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on July 11, 2017 by Universal Pictures Home Entertainment. Reception. Box office. The Fate of the Furious grossed $226 million in the United States and Canada and $1.01 billion in other territories for a worldwide total of $1.236 billion against a production budget of $250 million. It was the 3rd highest grossing film of 2017 and the 11th highest grossing film of all time. The film was released in 64 territories worldwide, including almost all major markets, minus Japan, starting from April 12, 2017, and was projected to earn anywhere between $375–440 million in its 5-day opening weekend. By the end of the weekend, it ended up earning $539.9 million from nearly 23,000 screens, way above initial projections, to score the biggest global opening in cinematic history until it was surpassed by Avengers: Infinity War 2018. It also marked the 3rd time that a film earned over $500 million in a single weekend, after Star Wars: The Force Awakens 2015, $529 million, and Jurassic World 2015, $525.5 million. On April 30th, 2017, the film crossed the $1 billion mark, becoming the 2nd film in the franchise to do so after Furious 7. In IMAX, the film made $31.1 million from 1,079 screens to record the biggest IMAX April debut and the 4th biggest overall at the time. United States and Canada. Like several of its predecessors, The Fate of the Furious was released in the United States and Canada in the month of April, and like its immediate predecessor, occupied the lucrative Easter week holiday period slot, where it was expected to open with $125 million. It received the widest pre-summer release ever at an estimated 4,304 venues, besting the 4,242 opening theater count of Batman v Superman. Dawn of Justice 2016, the previous March. The film made $10.4 million from Thursday night previews from 3,310 theaters, the 2nd highest of the franchise behind Furious 7's $15.8 million. On its opening day, it grossed $45.6 million, with Thursday previews making up 22.8% of the amount, slightly better than the 23% for Furious 7. Earning a total of $98.8 million on its opening weekend, the film scored the second biggest opening in the franchise, the third biggest adjusted for inflation, and the third biggest April debut, behind Furious 7 and The Jungle Book 2016. It posted an almost identical weekend multiplier like its immediate predecessor, 2.166 times versus 2.18 times. Scott Mendelson of Forbes magazine compared the opening to how Spectre 2015 opening fell from Skyfall 2012. One notable record the film set was the best opening for a film with an African-American director, with Gray besting his own record set with Straight Outta Compton 2015. Other territories. Internationally, The Fate of the Furious secured a release in 69 countries. The film was projected to post an opening between $275 to $330 million from over 20,000 screens, with some analysts believing it could go as high as $350 to $400 million. It opened Wednesday, April 12, 2017 in 8 countries, earning $17.9 million, including previews from 12 countries. It opened in 33 more countries on Thursday, April 2nd for a total of 41 countries, earning $58.4 million, marking Universal Pictures Overseas' highest-grossing Thursday ever, and for a 2-day total of $82.2 million. It added 22 more countries on Friday, April 3rd, earning $112.1 million to score Universal International's highest-grossing Friday of all time, for a 3-day total of $194.8 million. In total, through Sunday, the film registered an opening of $441.1 million from 64 markets, setting new records for the biggest April international debut, Universal's biggest, and the biggest of all time overall, ahead of Jurassic World. It is the first such film to open past $400 million in a single weekend, with a bulk of it coming from China. Around $22.6 million came from 681 IMAX screens, which is Universal's second biggest behind only Jurassic World. It topped the international charts for a second consecutive term, adding another $158.1 million, after which it was surpassed by Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2, 2017, another film starring Diesel and Russell, in its third weekend. In IMAX, the film has grossed north of $58 million. The Fate of the Furious delivered $228.2 million debut, sans the two aforementioned markets. In Japan, the film debuted with $7.5 million. Although that's a new record for the franchise, the film debuted at number 3 behind Disney's Beauty and the Beast 2017 and local film Detective Conan Crimson Love Letter 2017. Their robust second weekend earnings blocked the former from taking the top spot, making Japan one of the few markets where the film didn't open at number 1. The biggest earning markets are China, $392.8 million, followed by Brazil, $41.8 million, the United Kingdom, $37.5 million, Mexico, $36.8 million, and Germany, $32.4 million. In Peru, it has become Universal's highest-grossing film ever. Critical response. The Fate of the Furious received mixed reviews from critics, 85-86. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, it has an approval rating of 67%, with an average score of 6.1 based on 310 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, "The Fate of the Furious opens a new chapter in the franchise, fueled by the same infectious cast chemistry and over-the-top action fans have come to expect." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 56 out of 100 based on 45 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, and those at PostTrack gave the film an 88% overall positive score and a 71% definite recommend. Mike Ryan of Uproxx gave the film a positive review, writing, "This isn't my favorite of the series. That's still Furious 7. It's hard to top those jumps from skyscraper to skyscraper, but this is a worthy entry. These movies know what they are. These movies know they are fun. These are fun movies." Owen Gleiberman of Variety, in his positive review of the film, wrote, Most franchises, after 8 films, are feeling a twinge of exhaustion, but this one has achieved a level of success and perpetual kinetic creative energy that's a testament to its commercial, cultural, demographic resonance. He also wrote, "If this series over the last 16 years has taught us anything, it's that just when you think it's about to run out of gas, it gets outfitted with an even more elaborate fuel injection system." David Ehrlich of IndieWire gave the film a C- and called it the worst entry of the franchise, saying, "As much a mess of conflicting tones and styles as it is of locations, this set piece, like the rest of Gray's movie, feels like a heap of random parts that were thrown together in the hopes that fate might somehow weld them into a roadworthy vehicle. But it's not all groundbreaking." J.R. Kinnard of Pop Matters magazine gave a lukewarm review, writing, "It's unlikely that devotees will consider The Fate of the Furious one of the stronger entries in the series. Still, the filmmakers and actors are clearly dedicated to making a quality product, avoiding the complacency that often plagues action sequels." Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 2 stars out of 4, saying, "Moments after Dom has gone rogue and apparently wants to kill them, they're making jokes. As they're racing through the streets of New York City or skidding along the ice in Russia, killing bad guys and narrowly avoiding getting killed themselves, they're cracking wise. Even within this ludicrous universe, it's jarring to hear these supposedly smart folks who refer to themselves as family acting like idiots who don't seem to care if they live or die or if their friends survive." Professor of International Political Economy, Richard E. Feinberg, has commented on the political significance of the film's opening setting of Havana in the context of shifting U.S.-Cuban relations, calling the 8th installment Hollywood's love letter to Havana. He writes, "In the Cuban sequence's dramatic climax, Dom wins his hard-fought 1-mile race, a Cuban mile, against a tough local competitor, by a nose. The loser is gracious. 'You won my car and you earned my respect,' he admits to the FF hero. Dom's response is equally magnanimous. 'Keep your car. Your respect is good enough for me.' In this instance, FF8 captures the essence of the relations between the United States and Cuba. It's all about mutual respect." Sequels. Following the positive reception of Johnson and Statham's chemistry in this film and the box office success of this film, Universal released a spin-off, Hobbs & Shaw, in August 2019. F9 was released in June 2021. It grossed over $700 million worldwide and received a similarly mixed critical and audience response. A 10th film, Fast X, was released in May 2023. Although Fast X was reported as the final mainline installment of the franchise, an 11th film, Fast 1 2026, is in production. You can judge the quality of each successive installment of the Petrolhead Fast and Furious franchise by its opening action sequence. Here, the action revs up with a car chase around the streets of Havana. One of the first Hollywood movies to shoot in Cuba, FNF8 effectively uses one of the most photogenic cities on Earth as a display cabinet for vintage hot rods and buttocks. The race is between a turbo-boosted Cuban loan shark and Dom Toretto, Vin Diesel, in a disintegrating clown car. Powered by distilled testosterone alone, Dom wins the race, driving backwards, consumed in a fireball without brakes. The writing is scorched into the tarmac. This episode is aiming for new levels of high-octane silliness. There is no shortage of muscle battling for alpha male supremacy. In Vin Diesel, Jason Statham, and Dwayne Johnson, the film has 3 of the shiniest, baldest, most artificially bronzed men in Hollywood. When they start to butt heads, it's like watching a human conquer game. Of the 3, it's Statham who swaggers away with the movie. Thanks to an audacious fight sequence accessorized with a gurgling baby in a travel seat and a cameo from British Grand Dame Helen Mirren as his tea-swilling mum. The baby is a key plot device. The child-menacing antagonist is super hacker Cypher, Charlize Theron, kitted out with stringy blonde dreadlocks, which are meant to suggest cyberpunk Princess of Darkness, but look a bit too Gapya and Goa for comfort. Cypher is stockpiling WMDs, but since she has the power to hack into anything with a chip, including, obviously, most cars, it's not entirely clear why she needs the weapons. A geeks will inherit the Earth cyberpocalypse hardly requires a carjacked nuclear submarine to trigger panic. It just needs someone to turn off the internet for a while. Ultimately, you would have more luck reassembling a working vehicle after Cypher's remotely hacked zombie car pileup than you would piecing together a logical plot. But then logic is not really the strong point of a series that features Diesel walking unscathed and in slow-mo from a screaming pile of twisted metal at least 5 times per film. Riding the success of Straight Outta Compton, director F. Gary Gray jumps into one of the most successful franchises of all time with The Fate of the Furious, the 8th installment in a series that seems increasingly critic-proof. How big are these movies? They have made almost $4 billion worldwide, with the last one shattering the previous series record, bringing in $1.5 billion on its own. There are big franchises, and then there's the Fast and the Furious movies, which have found the perfect blend of international appeal, ridiculous action, and of course an emphasis on family, whatever that word means to you. Regardless of reviews, this series is too big to fail. It's going to be around for a very long time. But that doesn't mean we can't be disappointed that The Fate of the Furious distinctly drops the level of quality in this series for the first time this decade. With a series that has been this wide-ranging in terms of critical appeal, it feels like a declaration of taste is appropriate. I didn't care much about the films at all until Fast 5. Although I agreed that The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift took more risks and was more fun than the awful second Too Fast, Too Furious, and possibly worst fourth film, Fast and Furious. It took 5 movies to figure out the franchise, turning them into roller coasters that alternated between cartoonish action set pieces and heartfelt conversations about makeshift families. They seemed like the answer to, what if we made the entire movie like those insane opening bits from the Bond movies? Plus family. And the series only got better with the inclusion of new faces like Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, and Kurt Russell. Yes, they're ridiculous. But that's also why they're fun. So why isn't The Fate of the Furious more fun? That's going to be the question to which you keep returning as you watch all 136 minutes of this film. That's relatively enjoyable when compared to other hollow blockbusters, but relatively disappointing when compared to the high points of this series. First and foremost, it's a movie that's over 2 hours long and has almost no plot. Dom Toretto, Vin Diesel, betrays his team after being forced to work against them by a Bond-esque supervillain named Cypher, Charlize Theron. They work to stop him and get him back in their family. That's about it. Throughout, almost everyone gets 1.5 emotions. Michelle Rodriguez does the most she can with her blend of confusion and love for the man that may be trying to kill her now. Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson do a lot with their characters' rivalry. Even it feels more like a Shane Black 80s action comedy than this series ever has before. Even the settings seem thin in terms of writing. The action jumps around the globe in a way that looks calculated for international appeal more than any real use of location. I picture a whiteboard in the writer's room that says, "Cubuk's hot, Russia equals cold." And while it's become something of a joke to say that these films are all about family, it really functions like a crutch here. They use the word over a dozen times, almost as if it's the fallback when they couldn't think of anything else plot-wise to link the action sequences. And here's where the defenders of the Furious Flame kick in with the chorus that plot doesn't matter to these films. It's all about adrenaline, and no one cares that the filmmakers forgot to give at least half the characters anything memorable to do this time around. And there are times when The Fate of the Furious bursts into escapist lunacy in which it's easy to agree. The big sequences work, especially a bit with a wave of hacked self-driving cars in New York City and the climactic chaos in Russia that almost feels like it's mocking the longest runway in the world sequence from Fast and Furious 6 in terms of MPH inconsistency. When The Fate of the Furious gives viewers what they're really paying that ticket price to see, there's an undeniably goofy, playful, fun time to be had. It's all the other stuff that starts to really annoy. This failing in the material that connects the action sequences is never more prominent than when Charlize Theron is on screen. The Fate of the Furious will go down as one of the largest wastes of a major talent in a blockbuster film in years. Likely cast because of how much ass she kicked in Mad Max Fury Road, writer Chris Morgan then neglects to give Theron a single notable action sequence. She's stuck on a high-tech plane, issuing orders to other people on the ground below. How on earth do you bring in Imperator Furiosa and not make her race against Dom Toretto? She has one interesting sequence early in the movie, in which she and Evil Dom overtake the team, which makes the rest of her arc feel like even more of a disappointment, because one sees what she could have done. There's no heat to this character whatsoever. No physicality, no sexuality, no passion. We don't even really know why she's doing what she's doing, and you can actually see Theron start to get bored. This franchise has always had a villain problem. Although it's increasingly interesting that every villain eventually becomes a hero, but this seems like the biggest misfire, not only in terms of wasted opportunity, but how much time Theron is forced to deliver dull, useless exposition. It's tempting to blame the relative failures of this movie on the loss of the underrated Paul Walker or the new director. The action scenes are well done, but the rest is surprisingly dull given what Gray has delivered in the past, leading one to believe he was purely for hire. The spectacle works. That's something we've come to expect. I suspect it will continue to work for a few more films. But if they're going to rise to the entertainment level they've hit before, this series needs someone behind the wheel who can make those narrative valleys between the peaks of the roller coaster ride more memorable. Find a writer who can write more interesting dialogue. Find a director who can add visual flair when cars aren't going boom. Give your increasingly gigantic supporting cast something to do. Of course, none of this will hold The Fate of the Furious back from box office glory. At this point, the destination is predetermined. It's the journey to it that's getting exhausting. The Fate of the Furious review. The resurgence of Fast and the Furious from straight-to-DVD, destined three-wheeler to multiplex monolith has been one of the more unlikely cinematic successes of recent years. This was a franchise that, with 2006's endlessly lampooned Tokyo Drift, looked less in need of a tune-up than to be scavenged for parts and left up on bricks. 5 installments later, and it's as close to a bankable vehicle as it gets in Hollywood. Of course, cynical sorts might suggest that the untimely death of Paul Walker midway through filming of Fast and Furious 7 gave the series a sympathetic second look from audiences that might have otherwise abandoned it. That, though, would underplay the strangely appealing alchemy of the franchise in the past several installments, which has seen it evolve from a gruff drag race B-movie to something far more universal, a turbocharged mix of cars, quips, and explosions, with just the merest hint of sentimentality to keep the date movie crowd sweet. For The Fate of the Furious, variously referred to as Fast and Furious 8, Fast 8, or for those really pressed for time, F8, another bolt-on has been attached to its action film chassis, that of the high-stakes cyber thriller. It's an incongruous addition, and one that frequently seems in danger of lurching into techno-jargon incomprehensibility. But things race along at such a ferocious lick, you scarcely have time to question the moments of incongruity. Chiefly, how can so many supercars be also somehow explosion retardant? The setup. Dom, Vin Diesel's sonorous-voiced Crim with a heart of gold, is living in Cuba with his belle, Letty, Michelle Rodriguez. Life is sweet, and there's talk of starting a family, but crashing into view comes Charlize Theron's Cypher, a tech-savant terrorist whose aptitude with a keyboard would make Anonymous blush. With one swipe of her smartphone, she's blackmailed Dom with some inconvenient detail from his past, and he's soon helping her steal a series of powerful doohickeys that together might just bring about nuclear destruction. Standing in Dom's way in this endeavor are his old racing pals, including Dwayne Johnson's law enforcement officer turned speed racer, and, in a nice Shaw, Jason Statham's big bad from the last outing, now performing the role of acid-tongued anti-hero. Statham's inclusion is F8's smartest move, his snarky one-liners and aptitude for hand-to-hand combat helping to break up the sometimes exhausting in-car sequences. Indeed, there's one gloriously goofy action sequence where Shaw battles his way through a plane full of goons that equals anything from the adrenalized mania of Statham's crank films. Theron, too, has great fun with the nefarious Cypher, despite the character often seeming drawn on the back of a napkin flimsy. She does an awful lot with very little, purring out extended monologues about choice theory and human nature, just like Malcolm Gladwell with access to the nuclear football. And there's an enormously entertaining cameo from Helen Mirren, channeling her inner Pat Butcher as the gobby mother of Statham's Shaw. Of course, these brief flourishes of character acting are merely aperitifs to F8's main course, to batter you into submission with pyrotechnic set pieces. There are 3 here, of which one, a confusingly edited sequence on the Siberian wastes, falls somewhat flat. Better is an opening sequence in which Diesel races a supercar with a nitrous oxide-fueled old banger, which should appeal to anyone who enjoyed the franchise in its early, motor-obsessed iterations. And, in the film's central set piece, Cypher hacks into seemingly every car in New York City and points them in the direction of a motorcade protecting the Russian defense minister. There's a convincing thriller to be made about our technophobia around the self-driving car revolution. Make no mistake, F8 isn't it, but it's still an effective and spectacular scene. Ultimately, you suspect that the future of the series rests on its ability to find new ways of making cars bash into each other feel somehow novel. For now, it's managing to do that, and the series' broadening of its action palette is a sensible way of keeping things fresh. But what kept the franchise afloat during those lean times was its melodrama-soaked character moments, and bar some extended relationship turmoil between Dom and Letty, and a couple of nice nods to the late Walker, they're relatively thin on the ground. Instead, this is a big dumb action movie in its purest, most honorable sense, fast, furious, and frequently fun. If there were a hierarchy of action cinema, you'd find a masterpiece of speed demon nihilism like Mad Max Fury Road at the very top, and on the next level a superior Bond or Bourne film, or Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. At the bottom would be the visceral, live-wire kicks of B-movie brutality. Somewhere in the middle are the Fast and the Furious films, which started off as drag race movies but morphed, over time, into an outlandishly extravagant genre all their own. One with just enough heart, and yes, mind, to make the stunts and velocity seem like something larger, a pure expression of character. If this series over the last 16 years has taught us anything, it's that just when you think it's about to run out of gas, it gets outfitted with an even more elaborate fuel injection system. And that's never been more true than it is of the 8th film in the series, The Fate of the Furious, which may just be the most spectacular one yet. That's because more than any previous entry, it draws elements from every conceivable level of the action cinema hierarchy. It's a pedal-to-the-metal car chase movie and a global thermonuclear cyber thriller in which a supervillain known as Cypher, Charlize Theron, tries to teach the world's superpowers a deadly lesson. It's also a suspenseful interfamily drama that takes the gruntingly gruff and loyal teddy bear badass Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel, and figures out a way to pit him against all of his beloved comrades, including Letty, Michelle Rodriguez, whom he's finally just married. The movie is also a playfully sadistic bare-knuckle rouser, with actors like Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham inflicting some serious bone damage. You'd think that merging all those elements would make The Fate of the Furious a bit of an overcooked stew. Is the movie top-heavy, only semi-logical, and 20 minutes too long? Of course. But the director, F. Gary Gray, straight out of Compton, who has shown a propensity for action going back to Set It Off, 1996, and The Italian Job, 2003, now proves to be a high-flying ballistic wizard at it. The Fate of the Furious is nothing more than pulp done smart, but scene for scene, it's elegant rather than bombastic, and it packs a heady escapist wallop. The fact that it's the first film in the series to have been made after the death of Paul Walker, and the first not to feature him since The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift in 2006, only gives fans that much more of a reason to rally around it. Box office should be over the top. The movie opens in Havana, where Dominic and Letty are on their honeymoon, an interlude that's interrupted when Dom agrees to race a Cuban hipster bully who tried to make off with his cousin's jalopy. It's an uneven race, with Dom stuck driving the slowpoke jalopy, which he strips down to its engine and outfits with a nitrous oxide canister that will make the car either go intensely fast or blow up, or both. It's the one classical old-school race in the entire movie, and it's a true rouser, with Havana making for the most decorous of old-world mazes, and Dom in the homestretch driving the car in reverse, its engine engulfed in flame. But when a slow-mo overhead shot shows him inching ahead across the finish line, damned if you don't want a fist pump. Following that rapid-fire appetizer, the film teases out its main course. Cypher, in twisty, long, blonde tresses, introducing herself to Dom and telling him that he's about to go to work for her and against his friends. When he balks, she shows him something on a cell phone that changes his mind. What is it? The film keeps us in suspense for a while, but for Dom to cave in and betray those he's closest to, you know it must be serious. Theron proves an ace villain, imperious yet personable, with a leonine cunning and directness. Cypher is some sort of vaguely left-wing power-mad cyber warrior. She doesn't want the usual money or chaos. She wants to force the world's nations into accountability. And even her curled finger taps on the keyboard dance with personality. Meanwhile, Mr. Nobody, Kurt Russell, the jaunty U.S. covert ops shark who leaves no traces, coerces Dom's crew into going back to work for him, a process that involves slapping Johnson's Luke Hobbs in prison, also that he can break out along with Statham's Deckard Shaw, the rogue assassin who's his loathed rival. Johnson and Statham get the hostile jabs flowing, but really, that's the language of this whole crew. The other sparring partners include the peacockish Roman Pierce, Tyrese Gibson, and the dweebish Tej Parker, Ludacris, as well as the entire team ganging up on Nobody's Green new second-in-command, played by Scott Eastwood with a by-the-book dork decency that grows more winning. The Fate of the Furious feels standard issue when the crew uses the God's Eye Global Scan computer program. Sorry, but it's got nothing on the stuff in the latest Bourne film, or the real-life NSA, or when Helen Mirren shows up in a too-cute cameo as Deckard's Cockney spy overseer mom. Yet the action set pieces are stunning, staged with a flamboyance that's surgical in its precision, and that emerges from their logistical sense of purpose. A chase through Manhattan with an army of remote-controlled zombie cars trapping the vehicle of the Russian defense minister who is toting a suitcase of nuclear codes really seems to be taking place in teeming, anything-goes New York City. It culminates in Dom facing down his colleagues, who spear his jet-black Mad Max mobile from 4 directions, and that still isn't enough to stop the guy. Vin Diesel has become a great action star, not just because of how he delivers those on-the-nose revenge lines, but because he expresses sheer will. The will to win, to survive, to drive, in every muscular grimace. The movie climaxes with a preposterously elaborate showdown at a military outpost in the frozen Russian wasteland, and the sequence has everything. A zipping across the glacier momentum that merges with destruction, fireballs even bigger than you expect, as well as a humongous nuclear submarine smashing through the ice, so that Dom can do a split-second kamikaze fly drive right through it. In the end, I'm not sure how I feel about our heroes being made into a pack of world-saving James Bonds, but what's clear is that there's probably no turning back. Most franchises, after 8 films, are feeling a twinge of exhaustion, but this one has achieved a level of success and perpetual kinetic creative energy that's a testament to its commercial, cultural, demographic resonance. So it only makes sense that its characters must now do important things. Breaking the speed limit never looked so responsible. Themes are best left under a film's surface, in the subtext, or revealed by subtle visual associations or narrative events. The Fate of the Furious has no idea what subtext or subtlety mean. Its approach to theme has all the understatement of the climactic action sequence late in the film. For reasons not worth explaining, our heroes drive a tank and several muscle cars on the icy surface of a Russian lake. All at once, a nuclear submarine bursts through the frozen surface and, crashing along through what must be several feet thick ice, chases the vehicles at top speeds. Not since the screenwriters were playing with their Hot Wheels has such an outlandish feat been imagined. And with this degree of delicacy, the 8th Fast Furious movie applies its tired theme, that its super criminal turned superhero car thieves are a tight-knit family. The word family must be said dozens of times in the film, as if the mind-numbed viewers weren't already aware of the theme. If a character questions whether the next mission is worth the risk, the answer is family. If a character has a fundamental problem with a member of the family, the answer is family. And when your second worst enemy becomes an ally to defeat your first worst enemy, they too become family. Every entry in the never-ending Fast Furious series is about family on the most superficial level. The theme is emphasized almost as much as its unfortunate use of those random, bikini-clad women the camera ogles at the now infrequent streetcar races. The series used to be about street racing and family. The family theme impels these mostly meat-headed characters, who are otherwise defined by the heavy flow of testosterone and raw machismo leaking from their pores, which combine to act like a natural baby oil that brings a glisten to their vascular musculatures. Family. It's a theme clung to by hordes of fans who aggrandize the soap opera relationships between these gearheads because they drive fast and make things go boom. And while many viewers and critics alike suggest the Fast Furious films have somehow improved over the years, as opposed to just becoming louder and dumber and faster and furiouser, the franchise has maintained the same dull dramatics about family since the beginning. The problem is, just saying family a lot in the script doesn't mean anything, especially when the story doesn't back it up. After the pre-credits scene set in Cuba, an obligatory street race sequence littered with random, objectified women, Vin Diesel's hulking hero Dom finds himself blackmailed into helping supervillain hacker Cypher, Charlize Theron, steal an EMP and some nuclear weapons. Cypher plans to take over the world, I guess, for reasons she vaguely describes as accountability. Meanwhile, Letty, Michelle Rodriguez, knows that Dom wouldn't turn his back on their God-fearing family because, family. And so the crew, Dwayne Johnson, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Bridges, etc., tries to stop Cypher and recover Dom. Backing them from the shadows is Kurt Russell's charismatic Mr. Nobody, an endless well of resources whose mid-B understudy, Scott Eastwood, son of Clint, replaces the late Paul Walker as the resident boring white guy. Also joining the family is Jason Statham's Deckard, the villain of Furious 7 who, if you recall, killed a few members of Dom's family. But through the course of the Fate of the Furious, Deckard's crimes are inexplicably forgotten and he soon becomes part of the family. Likewise, Deckard's own family, which consists of his brother Owen, Luke Evans, and a cameo by Helen Mirren as his mum, also earn entry into Dom's family. So, as it turns out, Dom's family is the kind of family that doesn't mind if a new member of the family killed an old member of the family, as long as they do something to prove they're worthy of entry into the family. After all, it's not as though the Fate of the Furious places any value whatsoever on human life. As our heroes drive through New York City streets, colliding with and destroying countless vehicles, the death toll and collateral damage must be in the hundreds. But rather than try to protect the innocent, the crew resolves to fist bump each other and say, "I got this," as families die all around them. Not since Man of Steel have so many people died without a word said about it. During the last half, the Fate of the Furious digresses into pure superhero mode. Rather than just saving Dom and re-establishing their family, the group must stop Cypher from starting World War III. Indeed, the Fast Furious series has fallen prey to the unfortunate trend in comic book blockbusters that require the heroes to save the world. It's not enough that they save a family member. The entire world must hang in the balance. Accordingly, the characters behave like superheroes. Though they were once thieves and street racers, now they somehow outperform any number of highly trained members of the CIA. They infiltrate top-secret installations with high-tech weaponry, somehow defeating their specialized opposition with all the bluntness of a hammer. Their computer nerds can hack into any government system with a few simple keystrokes. They dodge countless bullets. They survive crippling car wrecks, and they even use jetpacks. Yes, jetpacks. The casual stupidity and over-the-top manner of the film are more appropriate for Diesel's XXX series, a bloated ripoff of James Bond. Director F. Gary Gray, who teamed with Theron to remake The Italian Job, which seems like an art film compared to this, operates in the same style as his series predecessors, James Wan and Justin Lin. Which is to say, Gray's approach is loud and grating. His action has been chopped to bits in the editing room, and his production relies too heavily on CGI. It isn't all bad, I suppose. Apart from the overt themes of family and blunt force silliness of the action, The Fate of the Furious offers a few moments of humor. Watching Johnson's Hobbs coach a girls' soccer team earns a chuckle, and Statham, ever deadpan, has a funny sequence where he rescues a baby and shows his lighthearted side. It almost makes us forget that he killed Han and Giselle in Fast and Furious 6. Almost. But the film is ultimately a bloated mess of a blockbuster, meant to divert audiences in the shallowest of ways. Nevertheless, the franchise remains a juggernaut, an incoherent and relentless force that people unabashedly love, pun-laden titles and all, and which might signal our culture's continued lapse into an idiocracy. As for the future of the Fast Furious series, 2 more titles are planned by Universal Studios. Since Dom's family has already saved the world, expect them to save the galaxy in Part 9, and in Part 10, the universe. The Fate of the Furious release. The Fate of the Furious had its world premiere in Berlin on April 4th, 2017. The film was theatrically released in the United States on April 14th. The film was released in 1074 IMAX screens around the world, making it the widest opening in IMAX history. The Fate of the Furious movie review. Riding the success of Straight Outta Compton, director F.G. Gary Gray jumps into one of the most successful franchises of all time with The Fate of the Furious, the 8th installment in a series that seems increasingly critif. How big? Are these movies? They have made almost $4 billion worldwide, with the last one shattering the previous series record, bringing in $1.5 billion on its own. There are big franchises, and then there's the Fast and the Furious movies, which have found the perfect blend of international appeal, ridiculous action, and of course an emphasis on family, whatever that word means to you. Regardless of reviews, this series is too big to fail. It's going to be around for a very long time. But that doesn't mean we can't be disappointed that The Fate of the Furious distinctly drops the level of quality in this series for the first time this decade. With a series that has been this wide-ranging in terms of critical appeal, it feels like a declaration of taste is appropriate. I didn't care much about the films at all. It was more fun than the awful second Too Fast, Too Furious, and possibly worst 4th film, Fast and Furious. It took 5 movies to figure out the franchise, turning them into roller coasters that alternated between cartoonish action set pieces and heartfelt conversations about makeshift families. They seemed like the answer to what if we made the entire movie like those insane opening bits from the Bond movies plus family. And the series only got better with the inclusion of new faces like Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, and Kurt Russell. Yes, they are ridiculous, but that's also why they are fun. So why isn't The Fate of the Furious more fun? That's going to be the question to which you keep returning as you watch all 136 minutes of this film. That's relatively enjoyable when compared to other hollow blockbusters, but relatively disappointing when compared to the high points of this series. First and foremost, it's a movie that's over 2 hours long and has almost no plot. Dom Toretto Vin Diesel betrays his team after being forced to work against them by a Bond supervillain named Cypher Charlie's Theron. They work to stop him and get him back in their family. That's about it. Throughout, almost everyone gets 1.5 emotions. Michelle Rodriguez does the most she can with her blend of confusion and love for the man that may be trying to kill her. Now, Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson do a lot with their characters' rivalry. Even it feels more like a Shane Black 8's action comedy than this series ever has before. Even the settings seem thin in terms of writing. The action jumps around the globe in a way that looks calculated for international appeal more than any real use of location. I picture a whiteboard in the writer's room that says Cuba equals hot, Russia equals cold. And while it's become something of a joke to say that these films are all about family, it really functions like a crutch here. They use the word over a dozen times, almost as if it's the fall back when they couldn't think of anything else plot-wise to link the action sequences. And here's where the defenders of the Furious Flame kick in with the chorus. That plot doesn't matter to these films. It's all about adrenaline, and no one cares that the filmmakers forgot to give at least half the characters anything memorable to do this time around. And there are times when the fate of the furious bursts into escapist lunacy, in which it's easy to agree. The big sequences work, especially a bit with a wave of hacked self-driving cars in New York City and the climactic chaos in Russia that almost feels like it's mocking the longest runway in the world sequence from Fast and Furious 6 in terms of miles per hour inconsistency. When the fate of the furious gives viewers what they are really paying, that ticket price to see, there's an undeniably goofy, playful, fun time to be had. It's all the other stuff that starts to really annoy. This failing in the material that connects the action sequences is never more prominent than when Charlize Theron is on screen. The fate of the furious will go down as one of the largest wastes of a major talent in a blockbuster film in years. Likely cast because of how much Ashi kicked in Mad Max Fury Road. Writer Chris Morgan then neglects to give Theon a single notable action sequence. She's stuck on a high-tech plane, issuing orders to other people on the ground below. How on earth do you bring in Imperator Furiosa and not make her race against Dom Toretto? She has one interesting sequence early in the movie in which she and Evil Dom overtake the team, which makes the rest of her arc feel like even more of a disappointment because one sees what she could have done. There's no heat to this character whatsoever. No physicality, no sexuality, no passion. We don't even really know why. She's doing what she's doing. And you can actually see Theon start to get bored. This franchise has always had a villain problem, although it's increasingly interesting that every villain eventually becomes a hero. But this seems like the biggest misfire, not only in terms of wasted opportunity, but how much time Theron is forced to deliver dull, useless exposition. It's tempting to blame the relative failures of this movie on the loss of the underrated Paul Walker or the new director. The action scenes are well done, but the rest is surprisingly dull given what Gray has delivered in the past, leading one to believe he was purely for hire. The spectacle works. That's something we've come to expect. I suspect it will continue to work for a few more films, but if they are going to rise to the entertainment level they've hit before, this series needs someone behind the wheel who can make those narrative valleys between the peaks of the roller coaster ride more memorable. Find a writer who can write more interesting dialogue. Find a director who can add visual flair when cars aren't going boom. Give your increasingly gigantic supporting cast something to do. Of course, none of this will hold the fate of the Furious back from box office glory. At this point, the destination is predetermined. It's the journey to it that's getting exhausting. If there were a hierarchy of action cinema, you'd find a masterpiece of speed demon nihilism like Mad Max Fury Road at the very top, and on the next level, a superior Bond or Bourne film or Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. At the bottom would be the visceral live-wire kicks of B-movie brutality. Somewhere in the middle are the Fast and the Furious films, which started off as drag race movies, but morphed over time into an outlandishly extravagant genre. All their own one with just enough heart and, yes, mind to make the stunts and velocity seem like something larger, a pure expression of character. If this series over the last 16 years has taught us anything, it's that just when you think it's about to run out of gas, it gets outfitted with an even more elaborate fuel injection system. And that's never been more true than it is of the 8th film in the series, The Fate of the Furious, which may just be the most spectacular one yet. That's because more than any previous entry, it draws elements from every conceivable level of the action cinema hierarchy. It's a pedal-to-the-metal car chase movie and a global thermonuclear cyber thriller in which a supervillain known as Cypher Chalice Theron tries to teach the world's superpowers a deadly lesson. It's also a suspenseful inner family drama that takes the gruntingly gruff and loyal teddy bear badass Dominic Toretto Vin Diesel and figures out a way to pit him against all of his beloved comrades, including Letty Michelle Rodriguez, whom he's finally just married. The movie is also a playfully sadistic bare-knuckle rouser with actors like Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham inflicting some serious bone damage. You'd think that merging all those elements would make The Fate of the Furious a bit of an overcooked stew. Is the movie top-heavy? Only simological, and 20 minutes too long, of course, but the director Eggery Gray, straight out of Compton, who has shown a propensity for action going back to Set It Off 1996 and The Italian Job 2003, now proves to be a high-flying ballistic wizard at it. The Fate of the Furious is nothing more than pulp done smart, but scene for scene it's elegant rather than bombastic, and it packs a heady, escapist wallop. The fact that it's the first film in the series to have been made after the death of Paul Walker, and the first not to feature him since The Fast and The Furious Tokyo Drift in 2006 only gives fans that much more of a reason to rally around it. Box office should be over the top. The movie opens in Havana, where Dominic and Letty are on their honeymoon, an interlude that's interrupted when Dom agrees to race a Cuban hipster bully who tried to make off with his cousin's jalopy. It's an uneven race with Dom stuck driving the slowpoke jalopy, which he strips down to its engine and outfits with a nitrous oxide canister that will make the car either go intensely fast or blow up, or both. It's the one classical old-school race in the entire movie, and it's a true rouser with Havana making for the most decorous of old-world mazes and Dom in the home stretch driving the car in reverse, its engine engulfed in flame. But when a slow-mo overhead shot shows him inching ahead across the finish line, damned if you don't want a fist pump. Following that rapid-fire appetizer, the film teases out its main course Cypher in twisty long blonde dresses, introducing herself to Dom and telling him that he's about to go to work for her and against his friends. When he barks, she shows him something on a cell phone that changes his mind. What is it? The film keeps us in suspense for a while, but for Dom to cave in and betray those he's closest to, it must be serious. Theon proves an ace villain, imperious yet personable with a leonine cunning and directness. Cypher is some sort of vaguely left-wing power-mad cyber warrior. She doesn't want the usual money or chaos. She wants to force the world's nations into accountability, and even her curled finger taps on the keyboard dance with personality. Meanwhile, Mr. Nobody Kurt Russell, the jaunty U.S. covert ops shark who leaves no traces, coerces Dom's crew into going back to work for him, a process that involves slapping Johnson's Luke Hobbs in prison. Also that he can break out along with Statham's Decad Shaw, the rogue assassin, who's his loathed rival Johnson, and Statham get the hostile jabs flowing. But really, that's the language of this whole crew. The other sparring partners include the peacockish Roman Pierce, Tyrese Gibson, and the dweebish Ted Parker, Ludacris, as well as the entire team ganging up on nobody's green new second-in-command played by Scott Eastwood, with a by-the-book dork decency that grows more winning. The Fate of the Furious feels standard issue when the crew uses the God's Global Scan computer program. Sorry, but it's got nothing on the stuff in the latest Bourne film or the real-life NSA, or when Helen Mirren shows up in a too-cute cameo as Decad's copy spy over a mom. Yet the action set pieces are stunning, staged with a flamboyance that's surgical in its precision, and that emerges from their logistical sense of purpose. A chase through Manhattan with an army of Remotech-controlled zombie cars, trapping the vehicle of the Russian defense minister who is toting a suitcase of nuclear codes really seems to be taking place in teeming anything-goes New York City. It culminates in Dom facing down his colleagues who spear his jet-black Mad Max mobile from 4 directions, and that still isn't enough to stop the guy. Vin Diesel has become a great action star, not just because of how he delivers those on then revenge lines, but because he expresses sheer will, the will to win, to survive, to drive in every muscular grimace. The movie climaxes with a preposterously elaborate showdown at a military outpost in the frozen Russian wasteland, and the sequence has everything a zipping across the glacier momentum that merges with destruction. Fireballs even bigger than you expect, as well as a humongous nuclear submarine smashing through the ice so that Dom can do a split-second kamikaze fly right through it. In the end, I'm not sure how I feel about our heroes being made into a pack of world-saving James Bonds, but what's clear is that there's probably no turning back. Most franchises after 8 films are feeling a twinge of exhaustion, but this one has achieved a level of success and perpetual kinetic creative energy that's a testament to its commercial or cultural or demographic resonance. So it only makes sense that its characters must now do important things. Breaking the speed limit never looked so responsible. Other information about this film. The Fate of the Furious is as ridiculously entertaining as you might expect. It's certainly better than its trailers, which came across more like parodies of a Fast and Furious movie, suggested indeed no 8th movie in any franchise has any right to be as fun or effective as Fate manages to be. Fate has a great hook. Dom betrays his team? No, not. His team, his family, for mysterious reasons, joining hacker queen Cypher. Charlize Theron to help fulfill her nefarious agenda. Why, oh why would Dom ever do such a thing? Well, I'm not going to spoil that reveal for you, but it's a compelling human reason. With Dom now an agent of Cypher's, the team, Lady Roman, Ted, and Ramsey, and rogue DSS agent Luke. Hobbs are recruited. Okay, they don't really have a choice by Mr. Nobody to pursue Dom and Cypher and clear themselves in the process. They also gain a surprise ally in Jason Statham's Deckhead Shore, the villain of Furious 7. How quickly they all forget about Han's murder. The hunt for Dom takes them to New York City and Russia. The movie's opening race in Havana, meanwhile, gives Car Bomb a whole new meaning. The Manhattan sequence is the movie's most insane and effective action set piece as Cypher's hackers commandeer waves of cars with auto-drive chips to become her unwitting drone army. This autopilot assault is followed by the team's literal multi-prong effort to trap Dom's car. I hope Neil deGrasse Tyson one day explains the physics of how such a zany trap would actually play out. The final act is essentially one prolonged chase across the ice in Russia. If you ever wanted to see the rock surfer torpedo or cars take on a nuclear sub, then Fate of the Furious is the movie for you. But this whole sequence goes on for way too long, culminating in some truly logic-defying antics, even by this series' admittedly low standards. The hand-to-hand combat here is likewise over the top, especially Dwayne Johnson's bone-crunching, brawling Jason Statham. Also gets several cool action moments, but it's these two rivals' verbal sparring that proves even more ridiculously macho as their insults grow increasingly crude, yet funny as the film proceeds. The patriarch of the Fast family, Dominic Toretto Diesel, is an ex-convict auto mechanic by day, street racer at night, who also happens to be involved in hijackings around Los Angeles. His life takes a turn when Brian O'Kakonor enters the picture, and the two form a bond that transcends friendship. They become family. The American Muscle. Car-loving racer is brother to MIA and eventual husband to Letty. Throughout the films, Dom puts his team together for various heists, revenge schemes, and more often done in the name of family BR Bay. An undercover cop turned full-time street racer, Brian Paul Walker leaves his time in law enforcement after infiltrating Dom's gang in the first film. He invariably ends up working with the law in some capacity again and again. though including when he briefly becomes an FBI agent in the fourth film, Brian's allegiances remain with the Fast family. Though which includes his wife, MIA family, is so important to Brian, however, that he ends up deciding to leave the adventurous life he's led behind, instead retiring with MIA and their son, Jack. The character's arc in the final film is influenced by the real-life death of actor Paul Walker, which occurred during the making of the film. Dom's sister and Brian's romantic interest, Mia Jordana. Brewster can hold her own on the streets as the series progresses. However, she starts to build a home life for herself, Brian, and their kids, which sidelines her from the action in the later films. As she takes more of a support role, she helps remotely after she becomes pregnant with Jack, and as their schemes become progressively more dangerous, she worries the threat that it presents to her family. That worry and the promise of building a family eventually leads to her, Brian, and Jack to retire from the game in Furious 7. BRBR Mia stayed. Retired during the Fate of the Furious, but returned in F9 to help stop her and Dom's brother Jacob from gaining control of a weapon system called Project Re. The love of Dom's life, Lady Michelle Rodriguez, is a key member of Dom's crew but was thought to be killed during Fast and Furious. She's revealed to still be alive, however, and with amnesia no less. She's recovered in this state by Owen Shaw, who uses her forgotten past to his benefit, turning her against the Fast family cast. She returns to the Tredo crew after Dom saves her life, even though she can't remember her time with them, only to inevitably regain her memories, including the fact that she and Dom are married. Director F.G. Gary Gay's movie, like a wrestling narrative, is built around face-heel turns and heel-face turns. These redemptions will also allow for some refreshing of the ranks in the inevitable 9th and 10th films. Dwayne Johnson's feud with Vin Diesel is no publicity stunt, so I don't expect him to continue with the franchise after this film. But the real standout among the cast is the series' new adversary. Sherazon brings the proper degree of icy cruelty to Cypher, who is essentially a Bond villain. She operates out of a jet, has a seemingly endless supply of henchmen, and harbors plans for global domination. Theon underplays the role, making Cypher's head games and willingness to kill anyone and delivering it all with a cobra-like stillness all the creepier. The biggest letdown is that we never get to see Theron, who previously burned rubber in the Italian Job in Mad Max Fury Road, behind the wheel or throwing down as Fury Road, and the trailers for her upcoming Atomic Blonde prove she's more than capable of handling. As has been widely reported, Helen Mirren has a small but scene-stealing role in the film. The less said the better for the sake of spoilers, but I would welcome her character's return in future sequels. And with more screen time. Less effective is series newcomer Scott Eastwood as Mr. Nobody's no-nonsense Deputy Eastwood. Seems a bit too old to play such a call character, and the jokey jabs at his expense don't always land. As my colleague Terry Schwartz put it after her screening, The Fast and the Furious is basically a superhero franchise now. Indeed, if Dom joined a super soldier program in the next movie, I wouldn't bat an eye. The team goes into space in the 10th movie. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? Now that the franchise is basically a soap opera meets comic book series, then it's truly anything goes. I wouldn't have said that the late Paul Walker was in the top 5 or hell in the top 20 reasons that the Fast and the Furious films worked. But the fate of the Furious number 8 in a franchise that has never once settled on a routine naming schema. And God bless, it has me wondering, there's no absolutely clear reason why this should be so much weaker than 2015's Furious 7, and yet it most certainly is for all sorts of fiddly little reasons that we'll get into, but somehow weirdly the biggest one is that it's got no heart. Of course, we can all have a good time mocking Vin Diesel's lumbering intonations of family repeated like a mantra, promising domesticated emotional resonance in a franchise about if James Bond was a street racer. But the films mean it, as goofy and overbaked and dumb as it all is, you can tell that the actors believe it, the writers believe it, the directors believe, and we believe it too, god damn it. Take away Paul Walker, it turns out, and you take away family. Though F8 does itself absolutely no favors by needlessly compounding that loss with a plot that strips away the family motif even more. Actually, it occurs to me only in this moment that perhaps the film's depiction of its family unit, broken and in disarray, is a silent nod to the sense of lack the filmmakers feel in Walker's absence that might be giving it much too much credit. It's a heartless movie, and more to the point, it's a movie largely without a center. The franchise has gathered together so many characters by this point, including the second time in the series that one film's primary antagonist redeemed into a reluctant hero in the very next sequel, Jason. Statham has gone from blood-minded British psychopath in the last film to making goofy faces at a baby hair that, giving all of the something to do, necessarily demands that the film consist of a whole bunch of detached plot threads whipping around each other. It is a film that feels made out of modules of plot, but that would even be okay, if the modules felt like they were all facing in the same direction. And while that kind of happens in F8, it happens only with much visible strain. The film's central gimmick. And oh yes, we're definitely in the gimmick stage of the franchise at this point. Not that gimmickry is sinful for a series whose last movie was the cars parachuting out of an airplane. One is that soulful meat pile. Dom Toretto Diesel has been turned against his ad hoc family of colorful misfits, hackers, car enthusiasts, and Waveview, and is now using his inestimable skills as at plotting heists and driving cars to commit terrorist crimes. This is due to the machinations of a merciless woman who looks like the Snow Queen got dreadlocks. The world's greatest international super hacker, known only as Cypher Charlize Theron, that I felt compelled to write the word hacker twice in a 2S sentence summary of the movie, speaks to one of F8's more noticeable quirks, which is that it feels in many ways like a 90s movie that got lost on the way to theaters and only just tripped and stumbled into the light of day. Which is fine, I guess, though. It's a pity the film only borrowed the dumb parts of 90s action hackers with elite skills and left the good parts practical effects, something this franchise used to have in abundance. Anyway, Dom's a bad guy. Except we know that he's not, because we saw Cypher show him a photo on her phone. We don't, for a while, know what he saw. And when we do find out, it feels like a bit of a fudge that it would drive him to throw over all his friends and allies and new wife, Letty Michelle Rodriguez. And this strikes me as the film's single biggest unforced error. It's not like we'd ever believe for an actual fraction of a second that Dom has done a heel turn. So the film's elaborate plot of cutting off our access to his knowledge for most of the first half feels like a trick that's not working. The result is a film without a protagonist, for all the colorful characters surrounding him, and for all that Dwayne Johnson's Luke Hobbs has been a more appealing figure since the instant he appeared in Fast Five, the Fast movies and their later ensemble. Period have always orbited around Diesel, turning him into a shadowy mystery figure. Certainly this many movies in simply doesn't work. This leaves with a whole mess of story to unspool. I never quite figured how many segregated plot strands F8 is playing with, but it's not fewer than 3. They are not exactly hard to keep track of, though with so many balls in the air, screenwriter Chris Morgan and director F. Gary Gray, a newcomer to the franchise and not a beneficial one, never get around to making any individual conflict or plot point or anything else matter. I don't know and really don't actually care what the stakes are. Most of the time, Terrorist Wants to Steal a Nuke was literally being overdone half a century ago, and the more intimate character-driven stakes are indifferently applied. Statham and Johnson squaring off against each other in the most openly flirtatious scenes of muscle men threatening to kill each other. That part one was entirely on board with. Statham is apparently the solitary cast member who actually Enjoyed his time on set based on the on-screen evidence. Otherwise, it's a whole bunch of technobabble keeping us locked in offices and away from fast cars, or Theron's thoroughly dispiriting stab at playing a sociopathic genius one that the actor has described in interviews as consisting of basically nothing but scowling in underlit interiors. And for all that I do, really, think that I'd have forgiven the fate of the Furious all of its sins, or at least called attention to them much more quietly, if it had that sparkle that the last couple of Fast did in their action sequences. The endless runway from Fast and Furious 6, the skyscraper jumping in Furious 7. These are, of course, as dumb as all hell, applying the physics and logic of a Looney Tunes cartoon to a vaguely realistic action movie, but they are giddy cinematic bliss, at least initially. It seems that F8 might be ready to join them. The film's opening gambit is a flagrantly impossible street race in Havana. This is the first American narrative film to shoot in Cuba since the 1959 revolution, and it uses that privilege well. The culture and space of the city are captured as both exotic but also real and street level, and lived in with a car bursting into flames from the sheer exertion of speed. And I was all ready to settle in for something spectacular after that. Sadly, it never comes. One Statham fight scene with a baby in tow and a massive chase across the Siberian ice are the only action sequences even a little bit worth mentioning, and the latter is choppy overall and suffers from unclear staging of some of its more theoretically impressive stunts. The result is the first outright boring Fast movie in a good long while, and the break of a wave that started to rise back in 2011 when the franchise's fifth film unexpectedly turned out to be its best. I do not despair for the series. Wherever the inevitable ninth film happens to set itself, I'm hoping for outer space sooner rather than later, and under whatever maniacally weird title they whip up for it. I'll be there. Besides, for a franchise that already once revived itself from punishingly dull bad films to stall out in the 8th entry in 16 years, can be no disappointment for any reasonable person. I suppose I am thus being unreasonable to say that this was a pretty big letdown. No two ways about it. More detail. Okay, so we need to acknowledge straight from the start that this is the 8th film in the Fast and the Furious franchise. That's a real accomplishment and puts it tied with Star Wars, which is not mean feat, but it still has a bit to go to catch up with. Star Trek, Marvel, Bond, and wait, what Air Bud really? There have been 14 of them. Goodness. Okay, wait, we went off on a tangent there. Okay, where were we? Oh yes, 8 films. It is a real achievement and means that they are doing something right. However, to be honest, for me, I have not watched any since the second back in the day because they kept taking this ridiculous premise and playing it completely seriously, and it just grated on me. But given that this is film number 8, and given that this franchise has become one of the biggest in modern filmmaking, I thought I'd give it another go. And wow, was I pleasantly surprised. So, going into the 8th film in a franchise, there are some things that you can expect before the opening titles roll. There will be a lot of fast cars, a lot of women in tight clothing, a metric, a ton of machismo, and also a completely on-point James Bond narrative. Okay, I was actually not expecting that last one, but there it is, and it was a pleasant surprise. It is really fascinating to jump back in after all this time and see just how much the series has evolved, but also how in many ways it has really not changed much at all. So in today's review, we're going to look at the story, the characters, the action, as well as a couple of other tidbits. Okay, so let's be honest for a moment. Many of you are going to see the fate of the Furious for one simple thing: to see people drive fast cars both against each other in a race or trying to get away from the police or trying to catch a bad guy. Indeed, if you're here just to see those fine creations of engineering and art as they shred rubber down a city street, you'll be really happy. Indeed, there is quite a lot of action in the fate of the Furious, and not all of it is car-based. Okay? A lot of it is, but not all of it. There are some decent gun battles, exploding, building hand-to-hand fights, even the occasional riot to attend to. And all of this works really quite well. Probably the best examples to talk about actually occur at the end of the film. So I can't really say much without heading into spoilers other to say, but to be coy for those who have seen the film, did it just use a car to defeat a spoiler like that? Was amazing, but it makes no sense. Oh well, let's just roll with it. Probably the best non-car action sequence was a prison escape or dual riot towards the start, which had some great combat sequences, whilst also showing off just how much you do not want to piss off Luke Hobbs, Dwayne Johnson. Also, there is a very novel fight sequence at the end of the film with high stakes, and I really have to give the filmmakers credit for how they pulled it off. While there are a lot of cuts, the action is still clear and very fluid, so you always know what's going on, unlike a lot of other cut-heavy action films. However, one small issue is that in a film all about the cars, it's a bit disappointed that it is quite noticeable that they have used CGI cars in places. Look, not every film needs to be or can be Mad Max Fury Road, but some more work was needed to render the light maps on the CGI models. So they didn't stand out as much as they did. While the action is really good, what also helps is everything around the action, as it helps the whole movie shine. First, the locations in this film are amazing. We made the Bond comparison earlier in the review, but you really see it here as the Fate of the Furious jumps from one location to the next. I even really liked how they implemented the location titles. Iceland once again shines here and makes another compelling case for me to come visit one day. The film also starts in Havana and actually filmed there as well. And besides, creating a fantastic location for the first car chase. I do have to say this is the most rose-tinted glasses version of Havana I have seen in a while. There is no chance they could have gotten away with all that without the police interfering. An issue we will explore a bit more in a bit, as well as the locations. I have to give a shout out to Brian Tyler and his great score that blends strong action beats with current licensed songs to make a compelling audio soundscape for the carnage on the roads. Part of what works is that they have had the same team in a lot of the roles: editing, cinematography, music, costumes for a number of films now, and you can see that they just get the film's tone and characters. Of course, we can't talk The Fast and the Furious without talking about the characters, because of how they are, the more important more so than just about anything in the film. Okay, maybe the cars, too. Look, Vin Diesel gets a lot of flack for playing the same character or at least the same type in all his films, but you can't deny he is perfect for the role of Dominic. He oozes charisma, but while he may talk mostly in stares or in a low, growly voice, it is also clear how much he cares for his family, Dwayne Johnson as well. Look, Dwayne Johnson is one of this generation's best actors because he is comfortable in whatever situation you give him. From being a soccer coach to breaking out of prison to heading a raid in a foreign country with no parachute. If something goes wrong, Karis Theon is this movie's big bad playing Cypher. And while I thought she had an interesting introduction, the more the film went on, the blander, and one note her character became. Scott Eastwood is continuing his current trend in appearing in every action franchise as a CIA or military guy. He has played this role quite a bit, so it will be good to see him branch out a bit more. The rest of the supporting cast is amazing. Whether it is Liddy Michelle Rodriguez, someone you do not want to mess with, or Dickhead Shaw Jason Statham talking his mouth off Ramsey, Natalie Emmanuel Ted, Chris Bridges and Roman Tyrese Gibson banter, or indeed the delightful Magdalene Shaw, Helen Mirren. Now it is these characters that will help you get through this movie, because it's not really going to be the story. Look, the story is there for one proposed to drive the film to the next action character beat. So in that regard, it does quite well, but it also means it is very superficial and starts to fall apart on a closer inspection. Now, because we are talking about the story. There will be some slight spoilers here, so you will want to skip to the next paragraph if that concerns you. For example, for someone who is meant to be so smart, Cypher makes some really stupid decisions. Like, it is clear that Charlie Theron is trying to play at something deeper, but the script has given her nothing to work with, as well as this. You have things that just make no sense. Like, why is the Berlin police protecting a terrorist group? Why would Luke be flown to the USA to stand charges for something that happened in Germany, when it was clear that the USA government was not going to help him? These are just a number of examples throughout the film. In what world is an EMP a Class 4 WMD? And from someone who studied arms control and disarmament, the whole nuclear subplot is a mess. This lack of story also leads to the fate of the Furious' biggest problem. It's completely predictable. Seriously, you will probably be able to work out the fate of every character within a couple of minutes of them being on the screen. This being said, the movie will go and hit you in the fields at times. The characters are well written, even if the rest of the script isn't, and most of the story issues don't get in the way of the enjoyment of the film. And it is good to see them take the series in a new direction, this time into spy film territory, though there is this odd moment where we have all of these beautiful product placements of brand new car models, and then the movie goes and states that they can all be hackable and crashes them into other cars. I wonder if they knew that before. Okay, the placement. Look, in the end, all the Fate of the Furious really needed to do is have great action sequences and have great characters. And in both cases, the movie works really well. Now, would I have liked the story to have a bit more substance, of course, but it does not take away just how much fun this film was. Look, after missing so many of the films in this franchise, I think the best praise that I can give them here is that The Fate of the Furious has made me want to go back and watch the others that I missed. The number 8 sat well on Steven Gerrard, but not necessarily on movies Fast and Furious 8, a more mundane moniker over here changed from the appropriately overblown The Fate of the Furious. Across the Pond sets out to break a curse that took down the likes of Friday the 13th and the Pink Panther. And it does so in much the same manner that transformed the franchise from an also ran into one of the world's biggest box office behemoths by doubling down on Daft. This is no longer a down and dirty series about lovable carjacking criminals. It's a globe-trotting scenery. Smashing logic-jacking extravaganza. Fast 8 is more of the same, more or less, with the emphasis heavily on morph wrestling. It starts sedately enough with an almost entirely extraneous sequence in which VN, Diesel's carjacked Dom Toretto, and his wife Letty Rodriguez are on holiday in Cuba, getting caught up in one of the franchise's seemingly contractual obliged street races. By the end, though, that pesky escalation has delivered a true first for movies. A submarine car chase in between enough vehicles are total to make the end of the Blues Brothers look like the start of the Blues Brothers. These action sequences are handled comfortably by new director Gray, even if there's nothing here to rival the sustained insanity of the bus chase in Fast 7. Instead, it's during the film's frequent bursts of exposition that Gray struggles with the scenes in which the crew members each explain something while looking at monitors heavily redolent of TV shows such as NCIS. They further reinforce the long-held feeling that some of the supporting characters aren't really that compelling. Thank the Lord, then, for 3 actors who are having the time of their lives. First, there's Kurt Russell, who's Mr. Nobody, rocks up from time to time to helpfully explain what the hell's going on. The action stuff, he leaves to newcomer Scott Eastwood, just when you thought there was no more room at the inn. This movie has more characters than Twit Longer as his deputy, Little Nobody. But whenever Russell's on screen, his eyes twinkle like a man enjoying one hell of a career. Resurgence. The second is Dwayne Johnson, which should come as no surprise. The introduction of his super cop Luke Hobbs to Fast 5 was integral to the franchise's evolution from Call. contender to self-aware, sweat-drenched, gloriously silly blockbuster champ, and here with Paul Walker's Brian O'Connor absent for obvious tragic reasons. The bulk, literally and figuratively, of the movie's action falls to him, and he steps up to the preposterous plate, whether it's tackling a torpedo with his bare hands or exchanging choice insults with Jason Statham. The staff's decad was the bad guy last time around, hunting down the car gang one by one and giving good enough glower for them to keep him alive. This time around, thanks to reliably ridiculous reckoning, is on the side of the angels and actually emerges as the film's MVP. There's no glowering here. This version of Decade Shaw is a quip-happy one-man army that utilizes Statham's natural charisma in a way Hollywood has mostly missed until now. His standout sequence, though it borrows, are in on the joke. Something that doesn't seem to be the case with Vin Diesel. And to reflect that, while Dom's crew are off taking care of the fast, Diesel is stuck with the furious in his own little, rather doy, melodramatic movie with Charlize Theron's villain Cypher, who doesn't get to do much except stare at computer screens and bark standard. Issue threats. Mind you, even here, escalation is inevitable. Just when you think this storyline will be a fun-free zone, Diesel finally gets a couple of scenes with Dame Helen Mirren, complete with slightly dubious accent. Oh, and there's further good news. If you're playing the Fast and Furious drinking game, where you take a shot every time, Vin says family, you'll be pitched as an about an hour in. Now that's a win-win situation. This film, directed by F.G. Gary Gray, written by Chris Morgan, produced by Neil H. Moritz, Vin Diesel, Michael Fottrell, Chris Morgan, starring Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Ludacris Bridges, Kurt Russell, Charlize Theron, cinematography, Stephen F. Winden, edited by Christian Wagner, Paul Rubel, music by Brian Tyler, production companies, Universal Pictures, Original Film, One Race Films, China Film Company Limited, Dentsu Inc., Fuji 8 Company Limited, distributed by Universal Pictures. Release dates: April 4th, 2017 in Berlin, April 14th, 2017 in United States. Running time, 136 minutes. Countries, United States, China. Languages, English, Mandarin. Budget, $250 to $270 million. Box office, $1.236 billion. So friends, this is the detailed review of the film, The Fate of the Furious, and some interesting facts about this film. Hope you like this video. Do give our video a like and subscribe West Films to our channel to watch videos. Thanks for watching.